We're now joined by Brian Wheat of Tesla, the author of the new book, Son of a Milkman. How are you today, Brian?
I'm good. How you doing, buddy?
Doing fantastic, man. Loving the memories, loving the book, loving everything that you guys have done. I know there's a lot of history to it, and it's really amazing, hearing about it and reading about it in the book. I know the book's been a long time coming. Tell us a little bit about the process of, going back and really recounting your life.
Well, it was a bit like just trying to go back as far as I can remember and put it together in a kind of a timeline. And I started as far back as I can remember when I was about 4 or 5, and it comes all the way to just when this COVID thing happened. So the book spans from the beginning there to now.
Yeah, well, I know it's something to really put your thoughts and memories down to paper. It's one thing to kind of daydream about the past, but to really kind of catalog your life, I know is pretty significant. Now I know you and Frank and the boys grew up in Sacramento, which a lot of people don't necessarily know unless you visited there. You're just assuming it's a California town like LA or San Francisco or something, but I know there's some pretty rough parts of town, and it's a pretty somewhat blue collar town, even though it's the capital of California. Tell us about your memories of growing up, and I guess a lot of kids around you decide if they were going into gangs or crime, or if they were going to go to college. Tell us about your early days and kind of getting out of the the rough parts of Sacramento and making something with your life.
Well, we where me and Frank grew up was kind of not the nicest part of town, and we went to school, and there were definitely kids that got into crime and stuff, and me and Frank chose to get into music. That was kind of our outlet, and that's what we got into versus probably some of the bad things, which probably helped us stay on a better path than a lot of the kids we grew up with did.
Yeah, I know that growing up in a town like that, you dream of kind of going to the big city. Do you guys remember like going into the Bay Area and San Francisco and kind of seeing the big concerts or the big record stores, kind of feeling like that's what you wanted to do? Because the Bay Area obviously had a very rich musical history.
Yeah, we didn't really go to the Bay Area too much. Outside of the big Day on the Green concerts and stuff. We saw concerts at the Memorial Auditorium in Sacramento. That's where we saw a lot of our concerts, and we had record shops there and stuff. I mean, Sacramento's a pretty big city. It's over 1 million people. So it had a music scene and stuff. There was no one really famous from there up until Tesla. But we didn't really go too much to San Francisco, okay, to be honest with you.
Do you remember the first big arena show you went to where it really, music hit you over the head? Like, that's what we want to do.
The first show I ever saw like that was the Tubes, White Punks on Dope tour.
Okay.
And that was at the Sacramento Memorial Auditorium, and that was the first real concert I ever saw.
Right, with Fee Waybill and... Right, and they had the whole theatrical thing with Fee Waybill as Quaalude on the platform shoes and all the crazy dancers and all that. What was your impression of that show?
Well, they had a lot of half-naked chicks on stage, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, they definitely pushed the envelope. You know, do you remember what the first day on the green when you went to Oakland? What was that first big stadium show you saw?
I want to say it was the Scorpions. Was it the Scorpions? Or maybe it was, yeah, I think it was the Scorpions and Iron Maiden.
Okay.
Foreigner and Loverboy all on one bill.
Yeah.
I think that's the first day. It's really hard to remember that. I saw a few of them.
Okay. Yeah, I know we miss Bill Graham. He was one of the founders of creating those big festivals, and he'll be sadly missed, you know?
Yeah, he was great. He was a great guy. He's very instrumental in a lot of that music that came out of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you guys formed the band, I know it was City Kid before Tesla. Tell us about, meeting Tom Zutaut and how that developed into, an offer, and you guys joining the Geffen family.
Well, we were making demos. We started out with Ronnie Montrose from Gamma, Ronnie Montrose, and he did our first demo. And the second set of demos we did were with this guy named Dwayne Hitchings, who wrote Do You Think I'm Sexy with Rod Stewart. He was in that band Cactus.
Yeah, with Carmine Appice.
Yeah, Carmine Appice, exactly. And I think it was around about that time we had this manager guy named Steve Klausman, who I talk about in the book as well. And he had sent some demos to Tom Zutaut's office. And we were playing a show with Ronnie Montrose in Sacramento at the Crest Theater. And Tom didn't come. He sent his assistant, Teresa Ensenat. And she saw us play with Montrose and went back and gave us a good report. And then it was after that we met Tom Zutaut, and he came up, and he was still at Elektra at the time. So he said, "Look, I want to sign you, but I can't sign you right now." And we didn't understand why. But he was moving labels, and if he would have signed us, he would have had to sign us at Elektra, and then would have left. So it took about a year, and after all that, he wound up signing us, and he was our A&R guy and our guru for the first part of our career.
And he had already signed Motley Crue over at Elektra, but this had he signed GNR yet, or that was coming up?
GNR was after us.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny though. Today, if you meet Tom or you see Tom or you talk to Tom or he presents himself to you, he presents himself to you as the guy that signed Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, and he never mentions Tesla. so I think we can get off him now. I give him enough airtime.
Yeah, but I know the Geffen label, was a story label. We drive by the big offices there on Sunset, right by the Roxy and the Rainbow, and David Geffen had a history back in the 60s and 70s, developing a lot of strong artists, including the Eagles and Joni Mitchell and all that. But I know it was, in a way, it's a double-edged sword. You're on a label with Aerosmith and Whitesnake and Guns N' Roses, but in a way you're competing with all those artists, to get the juice, get the push, get the focus,
Right, you're always competing when you're at a label like Geffen because they had so many top artists, and there's only so many spots on playlists or whatever, so you were always competing. For that label, the prime attention spot. And that's something we went through pretty much our whole career while we were at Geffen. But, you know, we did okay. I think we did all right with it all.
Yeah, I know it's for the layman, it's always hard to understand. Like, wait a minute, I know you're competing with other labels, but you got to compete with the artists on your own label, you know, but that's it. It's politics. Like you say, there's only so many slots on MTV, so many slots on radio. And if they get one slot, they got to decide which act to give it to that's going to give them the most sales or the most return.
Yeah, that's called business.
Yeah, it's politics and business. You know, it's to a kid making music, it's a harsh reality. But now I know when you guys started to make it and the money's coming in. Now I know a lot of people develop various, you know, drug use, drug habits, you know, things that kind of come along with the territory. Did you just felt, you know, when you got some money, it's like, I don't really know what to do with it. And the drug dealers were around. I know it's, in retrospect, it's hard to say why you shouldn't have done them, but, you know, I know cocaine was heavily promoted, especially in the 70s and into the early 80s, you know, it was just something to do, you know, give you a little bump, a little high. But I know looking back, obviously, you know, drugs take its toll. You know, everybody kind of develops a habit.
Let's be honest. Anyone who takes drugs, you take it first out of curiosity, and then you second you like it, and then you want more. And it's not good for you, and that takes you. You know, that depends how long it takes you to figure that out. So we're just like any other band. We were curious, and we did it, and we liked it, and we kept doing it, and it took its toll on us, and now we don't do it anymore. Some people figure that out, and some people just don't.
Yeah. Well, these days, so many of the performers are like athletes. I know you guys tour with, you know, Def Leppard and a lot of these big groups, and you go backstage and you know they're juicing, they're working out, they're stretching. Like the last thing you could imagine them do is like narcotics or you know getting drunk before a show. I mean, it's just such a different business. You know, everybody's got to be professional and you know give it their all because concert tickets is really, you know, come up in price. People, you know, aren't going to write it off. Like, oh yeah, okay, the drummer was drunk that night, or the guitarist didn't even remember what song he was playing. I mean, that's just not tolerated these days.
No, it's not. You know, Keith Moon wouldn't made it today.
Yeah, it's a wonder Keith Richards has pretty much outlasted them all. You know, Keith's been through it all, and I'm sure he's sober, you know, at this point. But you know, just coming through it, you gotta learn the lessons. But you guys had, you know, amazing success, you know, growing. I'm personally a friend of Steve Thompson. I know Michael Barbieri and Steve Thompson were instrumental in working with you guys. What can you say, you know, to Steve's honor? Because I know initially in the book you were saying you didn't really know what Steve did. Michael was more of just a technical mixer, but Steve was more this big picture guy. And you know, being a new band, you really don't understand that as much. What can you give credit to Steve Thompson for in the you know role of the band?
Well, you know, it did take me some time to figure out. It took us all some time to figure out what it was Steve was doing because Steve was the big picture guy and he saw the thing as a whole. And you know, because he didn't play guitar, we had to find a different way to communicate with him. And he wasn't an engineer. He wasn't the engineer. He was a producer. So, you know, those records could have never been made without Steve. And they wouldn't have been the same without him. And I think, you know, he added a lot to those records, especially in the dynamics and the energy that were in there. And, you know, I spoke to him a couple weeks ago, actually. Now that you mention him, I probably should give him a call and wish him happy birthday. Merry Christmas when we get off the phone. But, Steve's been involved in a lot of records, and, Steve was a DJ. So he has an ear for music, and he has a real keen ear for dynamics and grooves and stuff. And he contributed a lot of that to Tesla.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's like Rick Rubin. People say, well, what does Rick do? He's not the engineer in the studio, but he's that big picture guy. You can always hire an engineer, but sometimes having somebody understand what is the direction, what's that bigger picture sound or vision that we're going after. It's a little less tangible to some, not in the business, but it's like the coach of a team. He's not maybe even calling the plays, but he's got all his staff and expertise in knowing how to run a team.
Yeah, that was Steve.
Yeah. Now I know the 5-man acoustical jam was a real breakthrough with the song Signs and everything you guys did. In retrospect, again, what was the story behind wanting to kind of strip songs down and show what the band was all about acoustically?
Well, that kind of came about. I mean, we always had acoustic in our songs. I mean, Little Susie was had acoustic guitar on it. There's even on our first album, Too Late for Love, had acoustic guitar in it. So there was always a little bit of acoustic guitar in our music. But long story short, in 1989, we won an award in the Bay Area Music Awards for Best Rock Album for Great Radio Controversy. And we played the award because our stuff was still in transit because we were just finishing the tour acoustically, and we did Love Song acoustic. And this woman saw us in the crowd that worked with Boz Scaggs, the singer Boz Scaggs. And he had a club in San Francisco, so she wrote a letter to our manager, Peter Mitch, saying, would Tesla be interested in doing an hour-and-a-half long set, all acoustic, at Boz's Club Slim's? So when Peter presented it to us, we kind of told him, no, we weren't really into it, that's not really what we did, and that we didn't, really, want to do it. And he kind of challenged us, in the sense he said, well, you probably couldn't pull it off. And as soon as he said that, we were like, well, we'll show you. So we kind of put something together, and that was what became the 5-man acoustic jam.
Yeah, well, it definitely showed the diversity of the band and, the sing-along ability. Once you really strip those songs down, people loved it. And I know the whole Unplugged thing really, was popular from there. And I know you guys got to work, in Abbey Road. What was that like to be in those hallowed halls of the Beatles?
It was pretty cool. You sit there and you're playing We Can Work It Out on your Hofner bass, in the same studio, in the same proximity of where Paul McCartney was playing and singing We Can Work It Out on his Hofner bass in 1965. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, now that you've got the book out there, Son of a Milkman, what are you most proud of, accomplishing by, getting your story out there and, letting people know, your travel and your journey?
Well, I think the thing I want is I hope it maybe helps somebody that goes through the same kind of stuff that I go through. If they say, well, look, Brian and Tesla's, got colitis, or, he suffers from anxiety and depression just like me, then maybe it'll help them get some help and help themselves, out of it. And that's what I hope people take out of the book.
Well, we encourage everybody to go to Amazon and get the book and follow the travels. I know you have a recording studio in Sacramento, and you've been, very much behind a lot of artists, man, and we thank you for growing talent and giving us such great music.
You're very welcome, man. It's my pleasure.